my first time in Lithuania. I've been here now for 36 hours total. It's a beautiful country. I've had the chance to walk. It's gorgeous. It's so walkable. I've had the chance to walk the streets. The people are great. I love it here. So thank you very much to everybody that's invited me and hosted me here. It's been awesome. What I want to do is talk about my hometown. So Silicon Valley. I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. I had the fortune to be able to do that. And it's unusual because nobody's from Silicon Valley. Nobody's from there. Somewhere between 70 and 80% of all the CEOs of all the tech companies are foreign born. So it's not only the fact that they're not American or from California, but they come from all over the world. These are the misfits that can't necessarily start what it is they're trying to do or realize their vision in their home countries. So Silicon Valley's been a target and a magnet for people with talent all over the world. That's why we need to keep our borders open as well. And so let me tell you a few stories about what's going on within Silicon Valley. Because if you listen to the news and sort of check out what's going on, everybody says, oh my God, Silicon Valley is no longer the place it used to be. It's collapsed, collapsing and collapsed. You know, there's so many things that are going on. Specifically, over the last, say, 36 months or so, there's been massive layoffs. All the tech companies have shedded thousands of employees. And if you take a look at the numbers, it looks like this. So 93,000 employees. Can you imagine in 2022? And you top that up with over 200,000. So over 300,000 people have lost their jobs in the tech industry. What do they do? Where do they go? What's happening? It's really scary. So, I mean, Amazon alone lost 30,000. Meta lost 20,000. Google around 15,000 people. So these are it's a stadium worth, or several stadiums worth of people that are now no longer working there. There's this whole talk about San Francisco going through a doom loop. Doom loop is now a thing. It is where some bad news starts and it's not corrected, and the bad news generates worse news, which generates worse news, and everything's on a downward spiral, the doom loop. And so it's somewhat true. And if you take a look, this is City Hall, and City Hall is now a giant homeless encampment. There's a lot of crime, there's a lot of drugs. If you drive your car there, my window's been broken into at least twice already. There's just homeless on the streets. This is the BART station. You can't get into the local transit anymore. This is the building where I work and teach. And so I took this picture right outside. Shopping. So no longer people really welcome there. This is right just near between the financial district and Soma, which is the south of Market District, which is all tech is. So that diagonal lines Market Street, north of that is FIDI and south is Soma. And you can sort of see that all retail has more or less disappeared out of that central core. So it's no longer the shopping mecca that it once was. Part of it is just Amazon Go. I love Amazon Go. That's the place where you tag in, you walk in the store, you take anything you want on the shelves. It's like legal shoplifting. And you grab that and you just simply walk out. And then the Amazon tags you later with a little bit of a receipt, and off you go. This is when the last Amazon Go in San Francisco closed. So artists have sort of taken this the next step. And it doesn't really look like this. This is somebody's imagination about what's happening. Because, you know, it's a little sad and a little bleak. And cable cars have now ivy growing through them and so on. So that's our doom loop that's happening. Is it possible to get out of that? Meanwhile, there's all these other places that want to be the next Silicon Valley and are striving hard to do so. I mean, New York is certainly rising. Beijing, of course, the pressure from China, always there. London, the European hub. Tel Aviv has always been there as an entrepreneurial hub, startup nation. And then you get, within the United States, Texas, which is always talking about, you know, we've landed this company. We've now got HP. We've now got Tesla. Florida's trying to do the same. So, oh my God, this is my hometown. It's not looking all that good. So there's studies about this. I'm going to start with economists, because I was an economy minor. And these are, you may recognize Adam Smith, talking about Wealth of Nations, and Karl Marx, of course, Communist Manifesto, and John Maynard Keynes over on the side talking about the Federalist societies and so on. But the one guy that most people don't recognize is here. Who's he? Well, he's sort of the steward of what's going on in Silicon Valley. His name's Joseph Schumpeter, and he talks about these economic cycles, and that's sort of the theme of this talk. And the keyword phrase is gales, winds, massive winds of creative destruction. And so his theory goes that old inefficient companies must go out of business. Layoffs must happen. The kings must be thrown off the mountain through gales of creative destruction to release capital and workers so that you can go ahead and do more innovation. And so that's sort of the theme of this talk here. Just for fun, I took AI. You guys all know ChatGPT. There's a cousin called DALL-E. Play around with it. It allows you to generate art through phrases. So I typed in gales of creative destruction. And this is what DALL-E came up with. I kind of like this. I was thinking about making this the title of the talk, but there you go. How does this work? First off, this is Silicon Valley. If you haven't been to California, you're not familiar with it, that's San Francisco up at the top. And then it's about 75 kilometers from top to bottom. And down there, that place that says semiconductors, that's Silicon Valley proper. That's where I live. That's where Apple Computer is, the first thing that I showed right at the beginning. And so it started really in the 60s and 70s early on as the home of the semiconductor industry. And that's where I grew up. I built 3 companies from scratch, taking each one with a team of people from initial products through growth, through an IPO, to be able to build a Fortune 500 company. And so my first company was LSI Logic and started just a little bit after this time. But semiconductor and defense industry, a little boring, but that's the whole core. And it's not in San Francisco, it's in this area in the South Bay, about 75 kilometers south. So, but the magic doesn't last forever. There's a trigger event that happens. And in the early 1980s, for those of you just reliving history, there was super high inflation at the end of the 70s and 80s. It hit 20% at one point in the United States, which is huge. And the fiscal policy shut that down, really shut down a lot of the economy. So we are the industries there, which was old school mainframe computers, and the defense industry ended up really shutting down overall. And this is the cycle that happens. We get something that's generating income, generating jobs. It doesn't do well. People get laid off. Those people get laid off, and what do? You can either move out, which is what a lot of the people end up doing, and that's what you hear about Texas and Florida and all that, or you do a brand new startup. And so our startups at that point in time was the PC industry. So if you remember, back in the day, we had the start of a whole brand new set of industries, which were a transition in the semiconductor industry. We invented disk drives, we invented Ethernet, we invented graphics cards, and generated the PC industry. And this is the glory days of Apple back in the day. So now, all of a sudden, this semiconductor cluster starts to grow. We get other industries that are evolving, and they were right next door. So that gap overall, that big circle there, is about 20 minutes to drive from one side to the other. It's not that big. Also, at this point in time, venture capital started. I mean, it was in existence beforehand, but venture capital exists because banks won't lend you money as a startup. You're there with an idea. If you go to a bank trying to get a car, if you don't pay your loan, your car gets repossessed. They have an asset. Same with a house. You have a mortgage, they can repossess your house. If you have an idea, they can't repossess that. So venture capital is risk capital. It's the thing that's there to allow us, all of us, to go ahead and generate startups from scratch. And that's at a place called Sand Hill Road. I advise you visit that. It's super boring, but you'll see billions of dollars being transacted there on a regular basis. So that was growth. So the growth cycle looks like this. We start off with, I call it irrational exuberance, which is a catchphrase. things are going really well. All of a sudden, there's some sort of an external trigger event. And that's not anything that we necessarily have control over. It may happen elsewhere, like defense spending. Then there's a crisis. There's layoffs. There's a rationalization of those layoffs, and those people that are still there that haven't moved out are doing the next generation of startups. The startups start to grow, and we're creating new industries, and it starts anew. So let me run you through a couple of those cycles just to give you the example. Almost a decade later, in the early 1990s, we had massive defense cuts. This was the point in time which the wall collapsed. This is the point in time with Lithuania went independent. Yay! First country to do so. And at this point in time, too, we were under huge threat from the Japanese. The Japanese were building a massive manufacturing economy. They were taking over the automotive industry. They were taking over the semiconductor industry. It really affected us. So semiconductors, which were the king of the mountain, basically started to move out of the region. But we have a new industry coming, and that's the internet. So internet was basically invented in the 80s and started to come of age just after that in the early 90s. So we have brand new industries, networking, communication, internet service providers. We have digital video and digital audio. This is what I participated in. So the company that I helped run, I was VP of marketing, invented JPEG and MPEG algorithms. So we were the first one to put those into chips. So again, a company that went public. So from that, now we start to get new industries. So we start to get data communications, large databases. Oracle's the most famous. Software as a service is a brand new industry, and so on. And so now people are starting to grow outside of Silicon Valley proper and just up the peninsula towards San Francisco. Cool, everything's going well. Internet, let's go. Well, we were so excited about the internet that we got a little carried away. There was a point in time called the dot-com boom. Boom. Super exciting. So a little bit of rose-colored glasses. We're changing the world. It's all coming from us. We're going to be great. And I think we got a little carried away. There's a lack of common sense, but there were some good things that came out of it. To give you a sense for the development, take a look here. This is venture capital investment historically. Running along. Boom. Historical heights. We've never been as insane as we were during that short period of time. Calm back down. I'll talk about that in a second. And slowly growing. We still haven't reached those days. Here we are 2 decades later. So this dot-com boom did create some new businesses. It's basically the creation on internet. How do you make money as an internet company if you don't sell equipment? So Google as a search engine figured out the ad model, and that changed everything. And so now there was these new business models and new, really super huge companies starting to evolve. But as you saw, there was a dot-com boom, and on the tail end of that, dot-com bust. And I paint this out because it was like a nuclear winter. Everything was dead. This is real Silicon Valley death. Nothing was happening at all. Nobody was touching the place. Everybody assumed that the tech boom had just gone. We had lost so much money for so many investors. Nuclear winter. I went unemployed for 4 years. Some of it was deliberate. It was kind of fun, but for the most part, there was no real job security, and people were leaving. But from the ashes rise new businesses. And so in the dot-com bust, what did we see? Now we're taking what was the vestiges of the internet and actually creating real business models. So this is when social media was born, out of those ashes. And nuclear winter. So before, startups were all done it's the myth, it's really true, all done in garages and coffee shops. So what we're doing is changing that around and creating social media and entrepreneurship overall. So we had dot-com boom and bust, created ad-driven business models and brand new businesses. So overall, in order to get things going, we set up incubators and accelerators. Y Combinator was invented. Plug and Play, by the way, which is coming here to Lithuania, congratulations, was invented, and so on. So we're doing pretty well. Financial crisis happened after that. And so you can imagine same sort of trigger, and after that came the shared economy. So overall, what's going on is we have a series of tech whiplashes, and that's the theme of this talk. The top line is the population of Silicon Valley, rising and falling with each individual wave. But after each wave, we build new things. And so we have a diversified technology economy now, which includes clean tech, life sciences, enterprise software, a shared economy, and AI as it's now coming. Everything goes through these hype cycles. There's an innovation trigger where we build new technologies. There's a peak of inflated expectations where things go crazy. There's this big trough of disillusionment that we run through, and eventually these things become real. You can trace this for almost any technology. This is 2016, and you had blockchain and self-driving cars at the top. So now we are, fast forward to today, what's going on? Well, we've just been through COVID. We're going through globalization where Silicon Valley is no longer the center. We have all these other places. We have this VC crisis, which I'll talk about in a second. And in LA, which affects us dramatically, because we're now an entertainment capital as well, this whole writer's strike. So people are basically continuing to move out. There's been a downturn, and we're no longer generating any unicorns, or very few. There's this discussion about the globe being off. There's this whole idea about Los Angeles. This is from The Economist. Los Angeles and California leaving, so the writer's strike is happening, and so the shine is no longer on that one as well. So this whole idea of doom loop. Is it real? Is it true? Are we going to be able to survive out of it? Well, my thesis is that chaos creates opportunity. That there's so many things going on that watch what's happening as we dig our way out of this cycle. There's some evidence, though. I think the last panelist just talked about the fact that there are very few follow-on finances, that the VCs have basically shut down into a shell and are no longer generating things. So this is right out of PitchBook, new statistics. But if you take venture capital and parse it out, that's true. All the stuff below the line in the sort of pinkish orange there is follow-on financing. These are companies that are no longer being financed, and so we are seeing a death. A lot of startups, 2021, that shouldn't necessarily have been financed or were financed at a very high level. But the top one is the good news, and that's pre-seed financing. So we are seeing, and this is smart, venture capitalists and investors in general going after and nailing the early stage startups that are starting to emerge. So it's not all is doom. There's a global ranking of startups, and if you take that, we're still at the top. That's San Francisco, that's Silicon Valley in general. And I don't know if you can read it, but the scores of this ranking service say that we're better than twice as strong as the next series of overall entrepreneurial ecosystems. I looked up Europe too when I was doing this. Check it out. Lithuania is right there. So congratulations. You're there. Yeah, and take a look at that grouping. You guys are almost top 10 and getting closer. And I think by this time next year, you'll be somewhere a lot higher than that. So what does this mean? It means, that's what I wanted to show. That's what I wanted to show. All right. So what does this mean? There's all kinds of stuff going on. There's all opportunities. There's this idea of physical, cyber world with digital, physical, and biological. Things are merging. This is super exciting. The whole idea of technology, and entertainment, it's already started. We'll just see even more of that as Apple and others get even more involved. This is great. There's this whole idea of biotech and all the individual things. COVID vaccines were one of the pieces of evidence where that vaccine was developed in record time, artificially developed, parsed out and developed mechanically on computers, and it's changed the world. Climate tech, of course. We live that every day. There's so many opportunities there for real businesses. It's not happening yet. Some of the energy companies are trying to capitalize. Startups need to get into this game. And there's this whole idea of sustainable entrepreneurship as well. So I know it's very strong as a theme here in Lithuania. So if you take a look at today's hype cycle, it's all about AI and all the various generations of that, but it's more than that. It's richer than that. So my message to the world is basically Silicon Valley's still in business. There's all kinds of global resources that are available there. It's huge still for anybody with a great idea, great business opportunities, potentially brand new industries. We're looking for those, and there are resources there. Those were the people that are doing that were laid off are building the brand new startups. There's exciting new frontiers, and so let's go off and build this next thing together. So yeah, there's this discussion and theme about how Silicon Valley has collapsed, but we're looking to rise again. And I invite you, each and every one of you, to join us there when you have the opportunity to come on out, because we're going to build great startups together. So thank you.